Hello again, music lovers. You've reached episode 4 of Matt and Sheryl's Gen Excellent playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
And we're two nutty music lovers. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking music. We're going to continue to build our Generation X playlist, which is currently up to 5 songs. We're going to add 2 more today. And Sheryl, this is a landmark episode for us in a number of respects. Episode 4. Now we know that people are able to see our first 3, and we're actually choosing songs, personal favorites to put on the playlist, where in the first 3 episodes, the songs really chose themselves by virtue of popularity. So we're going to pick 2 of our favorites from 74, and they're actually popular songs too. One of them was a number 1 hit. Another one was a top 10 by a very famous artist. The songs, I'm choosing a proto-disco classic, staying in my young kid, soul boy disco kid theme. I'm choosing the theme to Soul Train, TSOP by MFSB, released on the Philadelphia International label in 1974. That is my pick. And Sheryl, what's your choice going to be this week?
My choice this week is Jet by Paul McCartney and Wings.
Which easily could have been my choice as well.
Yeah?
Definitely was in contention.
Big Wings fan when you were a kid, right?
Oh, yes.
And now still, I'm sure. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would say as a child in the 70s, pre-79, if you asked me what my favorite group was, I would have told you Paul McCartney and Wings.
Yeah?
After 79, might have said Blondie.
Oh, okay. Really? Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Okay, when we get to those years, well, I'll be looking forward to hearing about that.
I am really looking forward to 79 because, again, if you haven't seen our earlier episodes, by the way, I'm Matt Rickard. I'm a play-by-play television and radio sportscaster in the Portland area. My friend Sheryl here, a former co-worker, but she and her husband Mike own a chain of record stores in the Puget Sound area called Silver Platters. If you've never been, what is the matter with you? Support your local record store. It's more vital now than ever. And speaking of local record stores, I visited mine yesterday. Can you believe where I live, Washington County, which is suburbs of Portland, west side suburbs of Portland. If you're a Seattle person, don't know Portland that well, it's somewhat akin to east side King County, Bellevue, Kirkland area, similar demographic. Our 2 big cities here are Beaverton and Hillsborough. Beaverton, where Nike corporate headquarters is. Hillsborough is known as the Silicon Forest. We've got a lot of tech companies here. Intel has 4 campuses. Anyhow, we had no record stores in Washington County for a few years. The last one, Everyday Music, closed their Cedar Hills location. I don't know how many years it's been. It turned into a liquor store. Their landlord essentially kicked them out. They had a few locations in Portland. They're down to 1 downtown. They're only 1 now. But we had none for a couple of years. And then a store called Exile Records. It has another location on Hawthorne Boulevard, which is kind of a hip shopping district in southeast Portland. They've opened up a store up in the Southwest Hills here on the kind of the Multnomah, Washington County border. And I've gone in there a few times. Love the people there. They're very friendly. The store is very clean, organized. And if you know what I'm talking about, if you're like me and you haunt record stores wherever you go, a lot of them could be kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was in there and thinking about your song choice that we'd be talking about today, and one of my favorite songs, Jet by Paul McCartney and Wings. I heard a band playing on the speakers, and I thought of a connection between this band and one person in particular and a member of Paul McCartney and Wings. We'll talk about that in a moment. I got myself a stack of CDs, including 3. I collect this series from Rhino Records, super hits of the 70s. Have a nice day. I think 25 volumes total in this series, the last 3 of which are tricky. They're very expensive and rare. I've got one of them, not all of them yet. But let's take a look here. 1974, volume 17 of this series. It's all 1974 music. And actually, no, not 17. I wanted 13. When I think of 1974, and we talked about this in our first, this is our second crack in 1974. We picked 2 of the biggest hits in episode 3. The Joker by Steve Miller Band, and George McRae's Rock Your Baby. Those are our two big hits for 74. Now we're picking our personal favorites this week. But when I think of that year, I don't think of albums as much as singles. I hadn't really heard a lot of the albums of that year. We talked about this in the last episode. But there's so many great singles, a lot of one-hit wonders from that year that I still love to listen to. And if you're a Marvel movies fan, and we watch a lot of Marvel in this house because my son is a Marvel connoisseur, and so the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, that's the kind of music, the songs that he's got, the Chris Pratt character, I can't remember the character's name, but he's got the Star-Lord. He's got the Walkman, right, with his mixtapes, and it's all like 70s music, and right in the wheelhouse for me, and I'm sure for you as well. A lot of that.
Oh, totally.
Music.
Yeah. Yep.
But those are the kind of songs we're talking about.
Hooked on a Feeling.
Oh,
Come and Get Your Love.
Yes. Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin. Mm-hmm. Another classic you cannot not sing along to when it comes on the radio. Hooked on a Feeling could have easily been my choice for this episode. I love it so much. And I love the original version, too, by B.J. Thomas. I love them both in their own respects. Seasons in the Sun, one of the biggest hits of that year. Terry Jacks. Love that. Always have loved that song. Just kind of the goofy, silly, lighthearted, although Seasons in the Sun, not particularly lighthearted if you listen to the lyrics. Those kind of songs. I've always loved them. I know once punk rolled around in new wave, that stuff was considered way out of fashion. I never stopped loving it. Always have, always will. And these were the first songs, the first contemporary popular songs that I would have been listening to and playing on my little suitcase, my little white letter suitcase Magnavox record player, and the records that my dad brought home for me. And Jet is right in the heart of that. I mean, I was a huge McCartney and Wings fan as a kid, and that was my favorite song.
Yeah, I have a very distinct memory of hearing Jet for the first time, actually. It wasn't when it first came out. I was 5 at the time. I don't really have any music memories that young, but probably it was about 77 or 78 when I remember hearing it for the first time on my clock radio. Oh, yes. Getting ready for school in the morning. And this song comes on and just stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, what is this? And at the time, I hadn't really been exposed to the Beatles. I didn't know, I mean, I've heard of them. I knew their names, but I didn't know Paul McCartney's music but I knew it was something that I needed to figure out what it was, because the sound was just so mesmerizing to me and cool. I just was like, what is this? And so later I became a big Paul McCartney fan, Beatles fan, but that is one of the first musical memories I can really have etched in my brain, is hearing Jet for the first time.
So in my household, my parents are baby boomers, born in 47 and 48. So they would have been, that perfect age in the late 60s. And of course, our generation culturally has always envied that generation. I think it's safe to say, because of the era they were able to live in, and the particularly the art and culture of that era, if not the politics, of course. But would you say so? You're saying you were a fan of Paul McCartney first, Paul McCartney Wings, and then became a big Beatles fan later, or because the Beatles was something that was always there. It was always there for me. We had Beatles records in the house. My dad had his Beatles, mixtape that he played on his Wallensack open reel recorder occasionally. It's something that was always there. So that would have been ingrained before I, started listening to a lot of the McCartney and Wings stuff.
No, you had the musical childhood that I longed for.
Not perfect.
No, I didn't. I was the musical childhood, I said. I was not familiar with my parents didn't have Beatle albums. I didn't, they weren't necessarily fans. So I was not exposed to the Beatles until probably 1980. My best friend, who still is one of my best friends, her dad had Sgt. Pepper's, Revolver, Rubber Soul in his collection. And she was the one that introduced me to the Beatles actually through his collection. But that wasn't until I was in like 5th grade. So up until then, no, I was not a Beatle fan. I wasn't a Paul McCartney fan either. I just thought that song was so cool. I wasn't necessarily, I mean, I do remember hearing like With a Little Luck on the radio all the time.
Oh, love it.
From
London 45. Yep.
Yeah. So there were definitely, I knew Paul's radio songs, but that was still kind of came later after I was a Beatle fan.
And you and I talked about this ages ago. You're obviously a big Beatle fan. I love and appreciate the Beatles as much as anybody. I've heard very little of the solo Beatles output. If you look at it all as a whole, Ringo Starr, George Harrison, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, I'd be surprised if I've heard 5% of their solo output combined.
Yeah.
Just haven't.
I've
never gotten around to it.
Listened to 5% of Ringo's albums. But that's probably the case for a lot of people.
If you're starting with Ringo, I think the starting and ending point maybe is one album, the Ringo album, right?
Is Ringo, yeah. I like Goodnight Vienna. Actually, that has some fun songs on it, and I think that one holds its own still. But yeah.
Likewise, if you're just getting started with McCartney and Wings, we're probably at the starting point here with Jet and the Band on the Run album, correct?
I think so, yeah. Band on the Run is definitely his most polished album as far as the 70s, releases go. And because up until then, he was really just kind of recording, recording in his own studio, just playing all the instruments himself, although he does that on Band on the Run too. He does play all the instruments. But that was more just kind of by default because the rest of the band left. And it was basically he and Linda and Denny Lane, previously from the Moody Blues, like they're the first incarnation of the Moody Blues, were the only band members left when they got to the point where they were actually recording Band on the Run. But yeah, I do think it's definitely a good starting point for people to get into Paul's solo and Wings. And he likes to differentiate that Wings is a band, not just Paul McCartney. It's Wings, and a big part of that band, which is, actually the subject of a lot of debate, is Linda McCartney.
Yep.
In fact, the Ram album is actually credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. Which,
if you're OCD about music filing, Paul McCartney and Wings presents some difficulties, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. In fact, when you go on Spotify and look at Paul McCartney, there's only a few albums that will come up because those are the ones that are actually credited to Paul McCartney. If you're looking for Band on the Run, you have to look under. Oh, actually, I think Band on the Run does come up under Paul McCartney, but all the other ones come up under Wings. No, it comes up under Wings. It comes up under Wings. So
I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was credited to Paul. That album was Paul McCartney and Wings, right?
Wings.
That and Red Rose Speedway, which was the one that preceded it. And then the first Wings album was just Wings. No Paul McCartney, no Linda McCartney, just Wings. And then the album that preceded that was Ram, which was Paul and Linda McCartney. The album that preceded that, his first solo record, was just McCartney. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Wildlife is Wings, I think.
Right. Yeah. Wildlife, the first Wings album.
Right.
So for a little background on Wings, so McCartney leaves the Beatles, holed up in his property up in Scotland, and basically built a home studio. Pretty much recorded his first solo album there. Very, very basic. And then the Ram album, again, pretty much self-recorded, even though it's credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. There's some background vocals on there, I guess. Then he recruits this band, Wings, because he wants to go back on the road. He wants to play some live shows. But he doesn't want all the Beatles hoopla. And who could blame him? The Beatles hadn't performed live since 66? Yep. August 66, their last show at Candlestick Park in San Francisco. So all through, Sgt. Pepper's White Album, on through Abbey Road, they never played live concerts. He was itching to get back on the road. He didn't want to deal with the stress, the pressure, the overwhelming fame of having to live up to, the Beatles. So he made a personal choice. He wasn't going to do any Beatles songs. The tour was not heavily publicized. It was low key. It was basically college campuses. They toured in a van, he and the rest of the Wings and Paul and Linda.
And his whole family, all his kids in tow.
And played small venues with little publicity. I read something about collecting gate receipts from the something weird about how he got the gate receipts. I don't know. But I think it was a great idea. He just wanted to get out there, play music, have fun, get loaded, I'm sure, as everybody did back then. And he wanted his wife in the band. Now, last night, in preparation of our episode today, I watched something I'd never watched before. It's a TV special released in '73 in England called James Paul McCartney. So it featured a lot of live footage of this particular iteration of Wings, which was Henry McCullough on lead guitar, Denny Lane on rhythm guitar and several other instruments, backing vocals. Paul, of course, on bass, Linda on keys and various rudimentary percussion, rudimentary keys too, obviously, rudimentary backing vocals.
Yeah.
And the drummer was a kind of we're gonna kid Linda, but we do appreciate her as well. The drummer was Denny Sewell, who's an American, he actually played some drums on Ram. Denny Sewell did, so it wasn't all Paul. I really enjoyed this special, but there's definitely some cringeworthy moments.
The fashion choices,
alone. That was 1973. Now I've got a 70s,
but this is even beyond. Like this is just where, it's even beyond just the usual.
The clothes don't bother me so much. I kind of like the 70s fashions, especially for men. They were so bold back then. But the hair, oh Lord! Paul had the mullet to end all bullets.
Oh my God!
During that period of time.
So did Linda.
He kind of patented that haircut in a way, didn't he? I mean, who really had who's the first famous person to rock the mullet?
I don't know. It could be him because most of the guys with long hair, it's not the business in the front. It's just the party all around.
But he had a clip very short in the front, it's just kind of stringing down over the shoulders. I mean, prototypical mullet, which, is neither here nor there. It's got nothing to do with the music. But they did this song and dance number, which is just, it was so cringeworthy.
Oh, bad.
And I don't know the provenance of the song. I'm not familiar with a lot of the music on these records that they were. So we're talking Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway songs from those albums. Primarily.
I know the songs, and that song I'm not familiar with, so I don't believe it's on any of those albums.
Is it some
been an old standard or something? I don't know. Well, you probably know it if it were something familiar like that.
I'm not familiar. It sounds like something
in that vein, though. It has that. It's like, and they dress in there's dancers, these women dancers that are dressed kind of like the Victoria, half male, half female, doing these. Silly.
That was the most interesting part about it. Was that was kind of cool actually. The dances with that was edgy. But the pink suits, the drawn on mustache, Paul showing off his classic dance moves, and then like the sped up video effects. All this is available on YouTube. I highly, if you've never seen it, definitely go watch. Because there's a lot of cool.
I think it was also released on the Red Rose Speedway box set. It's released on DVD as part of that box set too.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could probably vouch for that. I don't have any of the recent the newest iterations, the deluxe versions of all these McCartney albums. Sounds like the reviews are they're extremely well done, really across the board.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
But
this special is worth watching though because they're performing live, and they sound great.
It's live-ish. I would say live-ish.
Yeah, that's true.
It was recorded live. So there's all these different set pieces. So there's a lot of costume changes, but all the music, and there's hardly any talking in the whole special. It's just one music bit going on to the next. But there's different sets, costume changes, different. and there's filmed bits. In addition, the live music, most of the live music is video. It's on video. And then there's like film segments in there as well. I think the song at Dance Deal was a film bit. I can't remember now. But there's a lot of cool stuff on there. There's a lot of cool stuff. The opening of the show, I love the opening of it. I thought that was really cool, where the camera kind of starts out backstage, the curtain is down, the camera's kind of up in the rafters, so you're looking down at this band getting set up, about to start their show, just the final stages of tuning up. And the camera's kind of dropping down. It's kind of dropping down behind them, and you're anticipating the curtain opening and seeing the fans out there. And the curtain finally does open as they kick into Big Barn Bed, which is the lead. It's the lead track on Red Rose Speedway, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool song. I'd never really listened to it. I mean, it's a nothing song, which a lot of these songs are pretty simple.
Yeah.
They're just grooves, but it's a cool groove. I mean, it's a catchy, cool groove. Sleeping in a big barn bed. I can get into that.
Yeah.
But the curtain opens, and instead of the audience, it's this big bank of television screens with like hands clapping. That was a cool effect. I loved it. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was really cool too.
And there's there's other stuff like that in the I mean, there's a few cringeworthy moments, but nothing makes me cringe quite as much. Now I watched part of another special that was not really released until just a few years ago, called The Bruce McMouse Show, which is that same era Wings band, filmed live professionally, but interspersed with some animation. That's definitely a fun watch too. If you all this is on YouTube.
Check that one out, because I'd never heard of that actually until you just introduced it to me this morning.
I was shocked. Shocked that you didn't know about it.
I have never heard about it. I didn't know about it, and it's a live performance. I mean, it's like a edited together several different performances, but they sound. I mean, once again, the band sounds great. They're doing cool songs from that era of Wildlife, Red Rose Speedway that, I really haven't seen a lot of live material from that. And it's really well recorded. I mean, it's a professional recording. Now it is interspersed with this silly animation, which Paul has always been a fan of. He did the whole Rupert series, and he's, that's not surprising that he kind of added that into it, because it's sort
kind of
fun, kitschy. Yeah. But, no, I knew nothing about it, so it's definitely worth checking out.
But back to Linda. You can't talk about Paul McCartney and Wings without bringing up Linda.
Yeah.
So it was less evident in the Bruce McMouse live footage that I watched, but still there. It was glaring in the James Paul McCartney special, because they're not hiding Linda. I mean, she's up there in the mix. They're not disguising. So again, the background of the band. They kept it low key. He wanted to be a part of a band. He didn't want to be the Paul McCartney show. He went to great pains that Wings is a group, but it's a group that his wife is in, and she is not a musician, not at all. And I don't know the background on this. You've probably read more bios than I have. I read his autobiography he did with Barry Miles. But that didn't really go into the Wing stuff. I mean, it's pretty much just Beatles. You kind of wonder what those talks were like. Was it Paul's idea all along to have Linda in the group, or was Linda trying to weasel her way in there?
No, I think it was more Paul's doing. I think he wanted to be close. He didn't want her to leave his side. I think he had to kind of coerce her into being more involved musically. And then, it just became this whole, like, their tours became this whole kind of like throw everybody, the whole family in the bus and go around the country together. And I don't think that she pushed her way into this. I think it was him more kind of coercing her into being involved.
If you don't know Linda's background, she's an American. She's from a wealthy family, the Eastman family. Eastman, her maiden name. She was a photographer by trade and pretty well respected. And that's kind of how they met, I think. She just interacted with a lot of the rock and rollers of that era.
She was part of that scene. Yeah. I mean, she was taking photos of Hendrix and Janis and Yeah,
she was getting these assignments from, magazines and newspapers. And but basically a freelance photographer and a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, one of the early set pieces in the special is her doing her thing with her Nikon while Paul is sitting there in a total white surroundings with a couple of photographer's tools. What do you call those umbrellas that I don't even know.
Yeah, with the lights, the lighting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And she's taking her snaps while Paul is, and it's live recording. Paul playing it like a little Beatles medley on acoustic guitar. He's a wonderful guitarist, great singer.
And
it's just showing.
I mean, really, he is, I think, the best vocalist of anyone. Like, his vocals are so above and beyond, and still to this day he can hit those notes.
Yeah, Paul has always been my favorite Beatle. John Lennon's a great vocalist too, no doubt about it. Paul's definitely one of the great rock vocalists, no question, and not just rock. I mean, just although his vocals on that song and dance song were just like.
Yeah, but we're going to pretend like that never happened.
Let's leave that behind. So we're talking about Linda now. So I just wonder about the talks between Paul and Linda before she actually agreed to do this. It's like, but Paul, I can't play. I can't sing. What do you mean I'm going to? What do you mean I'm going to be in the band?
Maybe hit a tambourine in the background, or maybe like a triangle or something. But come on.
And she literally cannot sing or play at all. And so the live stuff in this special. It's kind of a psychological thing. Whenever the camera pans to her, you can't help but notice what she's doing, and you're hearing it. The background vocals, she is so off key. The keyboard parts are just super simple. I mean, I could play them. I started getting piano lessons when I was 5. I could probably have been his touring keyboardist in 1972 after about 3 weeks of piano lessons. It's just simple stuff. And
so the thing is that the other option would be to have her just sitting up on the stage with him, which is kind of what Yoko did, or making noise. I mean, even if she wasn't doing what Yoko was doing, just sitting there with him, like he basically just wanted her up on stage with him. So it's like, where can we put her so that she's not doing too much damage, and that it's not also going to just be a spectacle of her just up there on the stage with me holding my hand or something. So that's basically what they did. Although they really didn't have to bring her up in the mix, I guess, as far as like the background vocals go.
I'm guessing that was rectified later on.
Yeah. In fact, there was a time that someone put out I don't know if it was just like a bootleg or something of just isolated Linda tracks.
Oh boy,
it's really sad. Like, I've never listened to it because I don't want to go there. I don't want to hear that. Doesn't feel good at all to me.
I don't need to hear it. I can hear her plain as day on that special. I mean, it's so glaring. And fortunately, again, you will forgive Paul his many sins, or I will at least, because of his brilliance. I mean, the guy just craps out brilliant melodies.
Yes.
I mean, it's insane how gifted he is.
It is.
And as a musician, I mean, he's got a facility on just about every instrument. I mean, guitar, obviously one of the best rock bassists ever.
Yes.
He's a well above average guitarist, above average keyboard player, and
drummer.
Not a bad drummer,
He drums on Band on the Run. He is the drummer on the album Band on the Run. Yeah. In fact, there's a thing I read where Paul was hanging out with Keith Moon, and Keith said, "Oh, Paul, I love the drums on that album. Who's your drummer?" He's like, "It was me." Keith Moon is complimenting the drums on Band on the Run. So, he's not so shabby.
Paul is so famous at this point that he can get away with having his old lady in the band. And you could so before Band, you already mentioned, before Band on the Run, McCulloch left, Sewell left. I think Denny Lane was still
Denny
part
stayed.
of that.
He was the only one that stayed. Yeah.
Can you imagine what those chats were like when Paul and Linda weren't in the room between the musicians about Linda? I mean, can you imagine what that must have been like?
Do you think anybody said anything? Do you think that like they couldn't have?
or when they went out for a pint with their musician friends, the ribbing they must have gotten from having to play alongside. But I mean, in all kidding aside, Paul McCartney. I mean, how many people would have the pull to get away with it like he did to have his old lady in the band like that. And he wanted her there because they loved each other so much. They never left each other's sides.
No, in fact, when she passed away, he said that they had never spent a night apart from each other. And that's all those years of touring, all those, I mean, that's pretty incredible. And really, you have to like just feel the love there between them, because if you watch Get Back, which everybody should watch if you haven't watched it yet, please go definitely. Watch it right now. The Peter Jackson Get Back. Paul
shatters a lot of
yeah. So they're talking about Yoko and her being in the studio, and he's defending John and saying they just love each other. They just want to be together. And he understands because he's in the same position. Linda is there all the time too.
Yep.
She's there by his side the whole time as well. And so that just carried over, after the Beatles broke up and he just started pursuing his solo career. He just wanted her with him.
And he was just doing what he wanted to do. And he didn't want to deal with the pressure of being a Beatle and having to write this next epic, masterpiece. He just wanted to get out on stage, tour around, keep it low key, hang out with his wife, get loaded. Big pothead, Paul, going way back.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And of all of them, he really loves performing live. Like he's the one that wanted to continue live performance. And I mean, he's itching to get a band out there and play live. So it's no wonder that, he got that going.
So we are going to circle back to Jet eventually. I just want to set the context of where Paul's reputation was at before that Band on the Run album, because it was not good. I mean, he got savaged by the critics. Not just those two Wings albums, Wildlife and Red Rose Speedway, but Ram when it came out. Retrospectively now it's considered one of his great works, but at the time it was not well received.
Yeah. And actually most of his albums at that time were very just homespun kind of, nothing very, certainly not a grand statement or, and in fact, going back to the James Paul McCartney special, he got totally panned for that. I mean, that was like, and that came about because he was in a legal battle with ATV, who at the time owned Northern Songs, and I guess to get out of that, the
Beatles publishing company. Yeah,
the Beatles publishing. He agreed to do this James Paul McCartney special, and just it just tanked. It bombed when it came out. The critics were like all over it, and that didn't help his reputation either.
But he, obviously he was unfairly treated. The expectations for Paul McCartney are not the same as a no-name artist. I mean, any other, like I said, the guy cracks out melodies with ease, and he didn't spend a lot of time crafting masterpieces on these records. They just wanted to get some music out. He wanted to get on the road, have fun. They're lighthearted. They're not serious. There's nothing heavy about them. And he wanted to be he wanted to be in the camaraderie of a group, and he wanted his wife by his side, and he was going to do it his way, and he had the power to do it, and more power to him for that. But, again, the critics hate, and then Band on the Run was a different record. That was more polished, more time in the studio. And Jet, if you listen to it, there's a lot going on that track,
Yeah, in fact, some of what the coolest part to me is that Moog synthesizer that goes through the song, which actually was played by Linda. Yeah, the one note.
We're talking about the bass drone that comes from Moog synthesizer throughout that song. It's kind of heavily, a little distorted. It's kind of pushed to the red a little. It's cool, kind of cool bottom on that song.
Yeah, it does. It does actually add a heaviness to it.
Yeah,
which is what I really like about it. And so that's really cool, and it just has that synth solo in it too, and which kind of also the synthesizer runs through the song, which is that pretty cutting edge and cool at the time. It was kind of a neat addition.
The production of that song, I think, definitely kind of aiming for, like transistor radios and cheaper. I mean, it's not a hi-fi classic. Although Band on the Run's pretty good sounding record, pretty well produced. That song, no, it's tinny, it's compressed, but it when you heard it on the radio, man, it jumped out of the radio.
Yeah,
and so that was the idea. That was going to be a single, and it was a classic. Not a literary classic for sure. I mean, that goes on the list of songs. And I was thinking about this a while back. There's a lot of really popular hit songs that just about everybody knows and recognizes. They'll know the chorus or the melody of the verses, but couldn't sing along to the lyrics. And that's one. The first song that got me to thinking about that was from 72, actually. Alone Again Naturally by Gilbert O'Sullivan. I mean, who our age or older doesn't know that song? Alone Again Naturally. And you certainly know how the verses go. Da 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 da. Ba da 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 da. Cool, really cool melody in the verse. Who could sing along to that song? I mean, what percentage of people that know that song, recognize it, could actually sing along to it start to finish? I'm saying a low percentage.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the lyrics, they are unbelievably down, sad. It's about a guy contemplating suicide whose woman left him, his parents died, and he's got nothing to live for.
Well, he's alone again, naturally.
That's right.
I mean, that's pretty down.
But I think Jet thinks, I mean, I've been singing along to Jet since I was in kindergarten. But if I got in the lyrics right, we're gonna find out here because I've pulled I've pulled up the lyrics. Now, I've never
Even if you got them right, they don't make sense.
No.
It's nonsensical anyway.
But there's a point behind this. We're gonna get to that point. So here's the lyrics. All right, here we go. We know that song starts. Jet.
Woo,
Jet.
Woo. Yeah, which is my favorite part of the song.
Oh yeah. So I can almost remember their funny faces.
That's where Linda comes in.
That time you told them that you were going to be marrying soon. Now, kind of saying something similar, maybe not quite the same phrasing. Yeah. And Jet, I thought the only lonely place was on the moon. Now,
I thought it was Face.
Me too. Yeah. So my whole life I've been singing Face there.
Me too.
Which makes even less sense.
No, there's a face on the moon. The man on the moon.
Okay,
you see the face, right? Okay,
sure.
That makes more sense to me.
All right, second verse. Was your father as bold as the Sergeant
Major?
Now, I got father and I got Sergeant Major, but I think it was born as a Sergeant Major probably when I sang it.
I thought it was old, I think. Was your father
as old as a sergeant? Okay,
yeah,
maybe.
Not that makes any sense either, but yeah.
Well, how come he told you that you were hardly old enough yet? Definitely didn't sing it that way.
Maybe that's why I thought it was old, because then they say, how can they tell you're hardly old enough yet?
I think when I sing that, it probably comes out, how come he told you weren't old enough yet? Not you were hardly old enough. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. It is kind of mumbly in that part. Yeah.
And
okay.
Jet, now here's the weird line. I thought the major was a lady. Suffragette. Now, when I was 5 years old, I probably wouldn't have. But, I mean, later in life, yeah, you sing that, but it's like, what? I thought the major was a lady. What the hell is he on about?
I think he just liked that word and it rhymed with jet.
And this came out after Ziggy Stardust, right? Suffragette City.
Yeah.
So, and then we get into that kind of rocket. Mater, want Jet to always love me.
Always love me. I love that part.
I think I was singing Mater from a young age, not knowing what Mater was. It's another way of saying mother.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
So I would have been singing that and just as nonsense lyrics, but that's actually the word. So the last verse. With the wind in your hair of 1,000 laces. No.
It was faces.
Yes, me too.
None of that makes sense. But even the actual lyrics don't make sense. So whatever.
So is he talking about individual strands of hair, 1,000 laces? I don't know.
I don't think he even knows.
Climb on the back and we'll go for a ride in the sky. Now, I would have sung climb on my back and we'll go for, but he's talking about a jet, right? But I mean, do you climb on the back of a jet to go for a ride in the sky?
If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Paul. He can do whatever he wants. He's a superhero. He can climb on the back of a jet and go for a ride. Sure.
So that's Jet in essence, and it just goes to illustrate, if the song is good enough, the melody, the chorus, the playing, if it's good enough, you could sing any old crap on it, and it doesn't matter. It's still great.
Which exactly goes back to my point that I really hardly ever listen to lyrics that much or that deeply, and that as long as they sound good with the song, it doesn't matter.
I think the critics probably spent way too much time perusing the lyric sheets on those early Paul McCartney songs. Part of the reason that he got so much crap. But I mean, even having never listened to those albums, hearing these songs perform like Big Barn Bed, I mean, it's just a fun song. Bip Bop, I mean, that's a cool track. I'm sorry. The live version of Bip Bop, it sounds like Crazy Horse playing a song that's got more chords than they're used to playing. I mean, the live version, it sounds like something Neil Young could have been singing over. So, both Sheryl and I, we read these, like the Rolling Stone, as young people learning about music, we read these Rolling Stone album guides and all these critics.
Oh yeah, those are like my Bibles.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take that stuff too literally. I mean, you use it as a signpost, but then you got to use your own ears to determine for yourself what's of merit and what speaks to you. And Paul McCartney's music, as silly as and throwaways the lyrics and the melodies might be, it's always spoken to me. It's spoken to me from when I was 4 years old, and it speaks to me now at 53.
Yep, me too.
So, Jet, great choice on you, Sheryl. Could have easily been mine, but I'm sticking with my little disco kid theme here. So I picked so "Rock Your Baby" was our hit choice from '74, considered proto disco, but really only disco in the sense that it's kind of like a demo for a big disco production that never happened. They just loved the demo so much they released it, and it was a big hit. This song definitely not a demo. Most people know it as the theme to Soul Train. The song is actually called TSOP. It stands for The Sound of Philadelphia. Came out on a label, Philadelphia International Records. And the group is MFSB. This is a big hit in '74, number one record. Essentially, disco was invented, and this is debatable, but it was essentially invented at this label, at the Sigma Sound Studio in Philadelphia. And the architects were Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. They were the driving force behind Philly International, the whole Philly soul sound. And MFSB was the house band. They were the musicians that played on all these classic records by the OJs and the Stylistics and all these great soul artists that came out of Philadelphia and released records on this label, which was distributed by CBS Records. So when TSOP came out, disco wasn't really a term that was commonly used. It was still kind of a new thing. The elements of disco are there. The main thing about disco is it's a very danceable, driving, straight 4/4 beat with a lot of hi-hat. A lot of hi-hat. The hi-hat, if you don't know, it's those two cymbals that come together like that, and you get that sound out of it. You're a drummer. You should be explaining this, not me.
I think you're doing a pretty good job, actually.
The disco, obviously, after it became really mainstream, and these were the earliest disco hits. So, like "Rock the Boat" by Hughes Corporation, one of the first disco hits, kind of came out of that same scene. By '79, you had the backlash, the Death to Disco Night at Comiskey Park and all that crap. Disco got a bad rep, and I think in retrospect, I appreciate it even more because I kind of see it as it's kind of like the last gasp of big band music. When you really think about it, you think about all the musicians that were employed on these disco records. People think of disco as mechanized and robotic, but these songs were performed by human beings, not machines. And
huge horn sections.
Lots of human beings went into these productions. I mean, MFSB, the number of musicians, they were an orchestra. They weren't a band. They were an orchestra. You had a string section. You had a big horn section. You had multiple percussionists. You probably had multiple guitarists. These were huge productions. And Philly International, their particular version, they called it basically soul music with a tuxedo on. So they were lush, lots of strings, very classy, as opposed to more like the poppy Motown sound or the more gut bucket soul sounds coming out of Memphis. They were classier. It was fancy nightclub type music. And the song was written as the theme for Soul Train. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, why isn't it called the Soul Train theme or just Soul Train? Believe it or not, Don Cornelius, who was the host and the driving force behind, he refused to allow them to use any references to Soul Train in the title. And in retrospect, he was like, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? I don't know what his motivation was at the time. But if you don't know the song of the Soul, or if you've forgotten, if you've heard it once, you would recognize it. It's it comes in with the strings, da 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 da. Then when it gets to the chorus, it's da 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 da. I mean, there's all these little flourishes that go on, and by the end of the song, the vocals come in. Those were provided by the 3 Degrees, who had hits of their own, including a number 1 hit while they were recording artists on that label. It's just a huge, grand production, a great beat to it, all these musicians on it, and I have loved it from the first note I ever heard as a kid, and certainly one I would be playing on my little Magnavox record player as a kindergartner.
Yeah, no, it's definitely in my musical psyche just because of hearing it in the background or hearing it, or I never watched Soul Train at the time, or I don't really remember listening to it particularly, but I know I am familiar with it. It is very much part of just a musical history, I guess, in that sense, that I recognize it. And yeah, it's in there.
David Bowie was obviously a big fan of the sounds coming out of Philadelphia at this time, and that was his motivation to go record there at Sigma Sound, and that was the Young Americans album came out in the mid-1970s. So, I mean, they were really hot. They had a lot of hit records coming out of there, very influential sound at the time, and these are proto-disco classics. Before people really knew what disco was, these songs were being played in these clubs in New York. The disco scene kind of came out of it was a primarily gay scene in New York, these dance clubs, but they were very diverse crowds, whites, blacks mixing in these clubs. And then it went overground and became huge, and it started influencing all kinds of music later on in that decade. I was trying to go on YouTube and hopefully find like a documentary about Philadelphia International, Phillies. Didn't really find. There were a couple of interesting interviews with Gamble and Huff and people talking about the scene, and one in particular, it's a shorter interview where they talked to a couple of the musicians that were part of that MFSB collective. By the way, MFSB, if you're wondering, the party line, the press kit said it stands for Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, but we all know that. That's not true. It stands for something else. That's NSFW. Let's just say it was there. The musicians. It was something the musicians would. It would be like a term of endearment in the studio when somebody really nailed a cool part. It's like you, Emmer, effing S of a B. But then they say it's Mother, Father, Sister, Brother to signify the togetherness and the diversity of the artists on our label, the musicians. But I mean, this MFSB collective, and they were people from all types of backgrounds, black, white, you name it, just about having a good time. And it's great party music. It certainly belongs on any 70s party playlist, and it's one I think most of our peers would recognize and probably still enjoy to this day.
Yeah,
certainly not going to bring down a party if that comes on. It's
Nope.
kind of hard to stay off the dance floor.
True.
But it's funny. So there's our two additions to the playlist. I want to get back to Jet for a moment and Linda McCartney. We're hammering this poor woman. So I'm at our local record store, and they put White Stripes on the speakers. This was yesterday afternoon. So knowing we were going to be talking about Jet and Paul McCartney Wings today, it kind of occurred to me, Meg White is kind of the millennial version of Linda McCartney in a way.
Yeah.
Really?
I see that connection for sure. I think that it was never her intention to be a rock star. I'm sure. I mean, I don't really even know how much she had played before they started recording. I mean, she certainly sounds like a beginner. Not that, I mean, I'm a drummer. I don't know if anybody probably doesn't know that yet, but I'm not much further along than she is, and I've been playing for a long time. But she was just suddenly thrust into this, limelight that they became huge. She's touring, she's playing these big concert venues, and I don't think that was ever her intention or anything that she was ever expecting to aspire to. And yeah, I definitely think that there's a connection there.
Yeah, and she got the same kind of guff that Linda did for her lack of ability.
Yep. But it's the husband's fault. They're the ones that drug him out there.
So anyway, that just kind of struck me while I was here. I really haven't listened to a lot of the White. I mean, I've never listened to it on like good speakers. I mean, for whatever reason, the British critics fell all over themselves for Jack White and the White Stripes, but they never really licensed their music. So I've been getting Uncut magazine since almost issue 1, and they put out CDs that are usually contemporary independent music that are attached to Uncut's given them just tons of ink, or I don't think they've ever licensed a song for one of those collections. So I haven't really listened to a lot of their music other than just seeing them on TV, and it didn't do it for me. Now I don't think you can judge music just by hearing it over your TV speakers. You got to hear it on a good stereo or good headphones before you can really lay down a judgment on it. So, I mean, hearing it in that record store with the speakers, like, it's pretty cool, but still it's like guitar and drums. You tell me it wouldn't be better with some bottom, some bass? I mean, come on.
That might have just been more about Jack White wanting to have the freedom to do whatever he wants on his guitar, just his guitar. Although, I mean, he could have brought bass into it too. I don't know why he didn't, but
anyway, I agree. That's not here. I've never been a big White Stripes. I do like the Black Keys a lot, and a lot of people kind of pit those bands against one another. A little different vibe with the Black Keys.
They're both duos.
Way less contrived, less gimmicks. The fashion aspect and the backstory with Meg and Jack and all that nonsense. I don't care about any of that stuff. So anyway, not to stray too far off topic, I want to talk about song. I know we reviewed the lyrics to Jet there. We lost a musical giant this week. Loretta Lynn, the great country star, passed away at the age of 90. I know you're not a big country music person. I came to it later in life. As a kid, I grew up in a small town, middle-class kid, white-collar parents. Country music was hick music. Me and my friends wanted nothing to do with that. That's for farmers and, rednecks. I mean, it's stupid attitude. It really hit me later on when I was driving across country, hearing a country music station in the middle of Kansas play 2 great classic country songs back to back. It was Buck Owens and his Buckaroos, I Got a Tiger by the Tail, and Dave Dudley, 6 Days on the Road. It was like a combination punch sending me into the ropes. Like, wow, where has this been all my life? Those songs are incredible. And the great classic country songs, you hear them once and you know them by heart. They're just so catchy and so tightly produced and beautifully written. But Loretta Lynn was a real pioneer in that she was a songwriter and performer, which was very rare in Nashville, even for a man in that era, but especially for a woman to be performing her own songs in Nashville. in that system. Extremely rare. And what amazing songs they were. And the song that she is best known by is was also the title of the biopic Coal Miner's Daughter, which, if you've never seen it, is a great movie. Sissy Spacek plays Loretta Lynn. She does all her own singing in the movie and does it well. And she won an Oscar for Best Actress. But basically, Coal Miner's Daughter it's a biographical song about her origins, Loretta Lynn's origins. She was dirt poor, grew up in she was born in Butcher Holler, Kentucky, in basically a shack and poor family. And this is basically their story. And it is so well. So I just want to go down the lyrics because it's just, she's just got such a knack for it. So the song goes, well, I was born the coal miner's daughter in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Holler. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing Daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal to make a poor man's dollar. My daddy worked all night in the Van Leer coal mines. Van Leer, and for you indie music fans and Jack White fans, Van Leer Rose, name of the album she cut with Jack White. Great record. Won Grammys. All day long in the field hoeing corn. Mommy rocked the babies at night and read the Bible by the coal oil light. And everything would start all over come break of morn. Now, here's where we get to my favorite part of it. So Daddy loved and raised 8 kids on a miner's pay. Mommy scrubbed our clothes on a washboard every day. Well, I've seen her fingers bleed. To complain, there was no need. She smiled in Mommy's understanding way. Like a lot of poor folks in the South, this is a family just barely getting by. They're surviving. In the summertime, we didn't have shoes to wear, but in the wintertime, we'd all get a brand new pair. From mail order catalog, money made from selling a hog. Daddy always managed to get the money somewhere. This I think is my favorite line. Yeah, I'm proud to be a coal miner's daughter. I remember well the well where I drew water. I remember well the well where I drew water. The way that rhythmically fits with the music, it just knocks me out. I love it. Now, the next 2 lines are even better. The work we done was hard. At night we'd sleep because we were tired. But it's not tired. She's from Butcher Holler, Kentucky. The word is tarred.
Hard.
The work we done was hard. At night we'd sleep because we were tired. I never thought of ever leaving Butcher Holler. And then the final stanza. Well, a lot of things have changed since way back then. And it's so good to be back home again. Not much left but the floor. Nothing lives here anymore except the memories of a coal miner's daughter. I mean, that is just, that's brilliant writing. Brilliant writing.
Yeah.
And so tight, and it so fits the rhythm of the music beautifully. I know Elvis Costello was a huge Loretta Lynn fan. I mean, she's a very influential artist upon not just country artists performing their own works, but female artists. And the themes that she took on later on, writing songs like The Pill and Don't Come Home a Drinking with Lovin' on Your Mind. I mean, almost all these songs were just, she said, I'm just written about my life and what's going on around me from a woman's point of view and a very strong woman's point of view. She is legendary for good reason.
Yeah. And it does kind of shatter my whole I don't listen to the lyrics theory with songs like that, because really that's what makes it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's just one of many brilliant songs that she wrote. And the one she's best known by, probably deservedly so. So we're running out of time. We're going to talk about, before we cut loose, we got to talk about the stuff that's been turning us on. I know you've been on a prog kick lately.
I'm on a prog kick for my life, I think, but this is, yeah, I just can't get away from it, Matt. I don't know what my problem is. Yeah, actually, I've been listening to Gentle Giant, The Power and the Glory, which is one of their albums I really never gave a lot of attention to until over the pandemic. All the surviving members, or I mean, I don't know, they might not all, some of them might not be gone, but the members of Gentle Giant got together and they recorded this video of the song Proclamation, which is the first song on the album, with their fans. So they've spliced, basically it's one of the sons of one of the band members that did this, spliced in bits that fans play, and then the band is in it too. It's really cool. If anybody out there is a prog fan or a Gentle Giant fan, go check it out. It's I think it's just, if you just type in Proclamation fans, it'll come up. And I saw that and I was like, this is a great song. And I'd never really listened to this album before. So I went back and started listening to it. And now it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite albums, period, right now, but definitely my favorite Gentle Giant album. I know that you have a lot of their CDs, Matt. I don't know if you've really listened to them that much.
No, not really. And I did put on Power and the Glory this week. I listened to it for the first time. This is not, so it didn't hit me like Caravan. It's not immediate. It's not something that you're going to get on first listen. It's naughty. It's complex. The vocals
You also have to get past the vocals first. Like Gentle Giant is one of those bands that if you decide that you're okay with the vocals, then you can move on. But they have very odd cadence, and it's like he sings kind of like the bass line, you know, like he sings, and it has this medieval feel to it, like do ba da 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 do do. You know, it's very.
It's not
some songs more than others, but
and they're not bad voices. They're just kind of they're kind of plain voices. They're not particularly distinguished voices, but yeah, the vocals are a little. They're just. A lot
it's
of
unusual, and it's even like jarring at times.
Yeah,
like
everything
what just happened?
Everything is just like a little bit off. You know, it's like a little bit disjointed. You know, it's not naughty. I think it's not Naughty like Hi by Paul.
Like Knotty.
Yeah, Knotty. That kind of naughty. But that's going to require a few more spins before that starts to sink in. But
it is somewhat of an acquired taste. In fact, they even had an album called "Acquiring the Taste." Like that was their second album. So it's very true for them. But I would say if you're going to listen to them, this is a good place to start, because I think it has their best songs, their most accessible. It's kind of, to me, it's sort of like if Robert Fripp was in Yes. Like that's kind of how Gentle Giant feels to me. So anyway, I've been playing that album to death lately. I've also been really into so that Gentle Giant album came out in 1974. Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield, which also came out in 1974. I've been like obsessively watching this BBC. It's on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's the first part 1, Tubular Bells. It's like, and it's a BBC recording that was done in 73, I think. And it has, I mean, the original Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield plays all the instruments, and it's just, you know, like edited and spliced together. But on this production, there actually are a bunch of people from different prog bands that are playing with him. And it is just mesmerizing. It's so cool to see and hear. I mean, I love Tubular Bells anyway. And it's always, for a long time, I've really been enamored by it, but I think watching this performance just even elevates it to a higher level.
Yep, so. Tubular Bells, definitely one of the breakthrough prog hits of that era, reaching number 1 in the U.S. charts. So we're toward the end here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm going to focus on one song. So there's 3 contemporary records I've been listening to, kind of rotating through. One is the Black Keys' new album, which I've been enjoying. The Father John Misty, Chloe in the Next 20th Century. I think I butchered that album title in an earlier episode. And then the other one is the new Arcade Fire record. And I'm enjoying the whole record. I love The Suburbs. I have not listened to all. I still haven't listened to their first one, which is many people's favorite. The Suburbs, I think, is one of the best albums of the 2000s. Love that record. I've heard Neon Bible. I enjoy it, not as much as The Suburbs. And then I haven't really listened to Reflector. And there's one other in there, too, I think they've released. There's one song in particular that just gutted me. And I don't know about you, Sheryl, but as I get older, I'm quicker to show my emotions. particularly with art, movies, music can be brought to tears more easily. This song shredded me, and so I'm going to go down the lyrics. I do like to sing along to these. I'm not going to sing because I think I will start tearing up if I sing it. There's a handful of songs that break me up every time, and this is so good. If you are a parent, particularly of kids, now I've got a teenager, you've got teenagers. This should hit really close to home, and I think everybody should listen to this song closely, parents and kids. I made a point of playing this in the car on a recent vacation that we took as a family up to Vancouver. And my son and I had some turmoil in the recent past, and I wanted him to listen to this song and hear the lyrics because well, I'll just read them to you. So the song is called Unconditional 1, in parentheses, Look Out Kid. So here's how it goes. Look out, kid. Trust your heart. You don't have to play the part they wrote for you. Just be true. There are things that you could do that no one else on earth could ever do. But I can't teach you. I can't teach it to you. Look out, kid. Trust your mind. But you can't trust it every time. You know it plays tricks on you, and if it don't give a damn if you are happy or you're sad. But if you've lost it, don't feel bad, because it's all right to be sad. And then kind of goes into a vocal chorus. Not a chorus, just a little do-do-do, do-do-do, do. See, I can do that without crying. Next verse. Look out, kid. Trust your body. You can dance and you can shake. Things will break. You make mistakes. You lose your friends again and again because nothing is ever perfect. No one's perfect. Let me say it again. No one's perfect. Right. Then it goes into the chorus. The chorus and melody and lyrics slay me. But I'm not going to sing it because I'm serious. I'm going to break up. A lifetime of skinned knees and heartbreak comes so easy. But a life without pain would be boring. I'm going to read that line again. A life without pain would be boring. And if you feel it, it's fine. I give you everything that's mine. I give you my heart and my precious time. And even just reading those lyrics, I'm starting to crack up. Next verse. Look out, kid. Trust your soul. It ain't hard to rock and roll. You know how to move your hips, and you know God is cool with it. But some people want the rock without the roll, but we all know there's no God without soul. And then the chorus again, but it's a little twist on the chorus. Lifetime of skinned knees, heartbreak comes so easily, but a life without you would be boring for someone like me. And if you feel it, it's fine. I give you everything that's mine. I give you my heart and my precious time. I give you my heart and my precious time. It's unconditional, no matter what you do. Just wow. Just wow. And the song is great, too. They did it live on SNL. Maybe the greatest live band of our era, Arcade Fire. If you've never seen, I've never seen them in concert. I'm going to have to rectify that. Certainly, as powerful as that song, as meaningful as it is to me, now as a parent of a 14-year-old son. But every time I've seen them live on TV, they kill it. They just kill it. They're so good. And if that's not the song of the year for 22, I don't know what is. So
wow. Yeah, I'll have to go listen to it. I haven't heard it.
I got you, didn't I?
I get it. Yeah.
I got you. Powerful, powerful lyric and a great song behind it. And a really good album by Arcade Fire. So that brings us to the end. That's that.
On that note.
On that note, just let that sink in, parents.
Yeah.
I will leave us. I'll leave it with a little levity though. So I play that song. I'm singing along in the car, tearing up as I always do when I try to sing along that song in the car. I make my wife and son listen to it. Obviously, it's affecting my wife as well. She's hearing it and getting the power of it. End of the song. Cooper, it's like, it's all right. So what you? So
fine.
Julia goes, "What'd you think, Coop?" It's all right. And I'm just like, all right, I give up.
All right, that's it. I'm out.
Yeah, that's it.
Done all I can do here.
If that doesn't scream teenager, I don't know what does. Teenage
You
boy.
just wait until you're in your 50s and
Oh
you've got a
God.
teenager.
So I had to leave on a laugh. So that'll do it for this episode.
Yeah.
We will start tackling 1975 the next time Sheryl and I convene, and this gets more exciting as we go along because we get to bring in more and more our favorites, and we're getting closer to Sheryl's actual earliest musical memories too.
Yes, finally.
So
I'm a late bloomer.
Until then, you've been listening to Matt and Sheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
And until next time, goodbye, everybody.